I mean, my dad told me to check it out. And so I started kind of like following. And,
Bill.
Yeah. So he was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, Eric's a good friend of mine. And actually I was like,
I don't have your rookie card. Sorry, buddy.
I don't know if he believes you.
I know he doesn't believe me.
But he was like, yeah, I'm going on my friend Eric's podcast. You need to check it out. He's like, listen to my episode. And so I listened to his episode. And but I even said, I was like, I think I already like follow him on Facebook, or because my friend Colton is like, so I saw like a lot of your posts and interactions and things like that. And so
well, the irony that I had started to follow you on social media because of the articulation and the things that you were commenting on. It wasn't really comments that you were originating. It was your response to different things you encountered. And it's so rare when you actually find folks that have put a lot of time and effort. And I never look for like big words or any of that. I look for brevity, because that's not, and I'm not the best with brevity all the time either. But someone really is concise and gets to the point, and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, so much of even my current job, my day in, day out life is just helping people to understand. And
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and articulating the why behind something, or my thoughts behind something in a way that can get a message across. So
let's talk about your background. Is obviously, she's from my hometown, maybe kind of, somewhat. To talk about childhood for you. Yeah. So I grew up, originally from Coriopolis, my mom and my dad. They got divorced. My mom remarried. We moved to Moon. So I born, raised, grew up Moon Township, graduated Moon High School, all that. From there, I went to college at Kent State in Ohio. Cleveland is, but Why do people say that? I've had a lot of people from Kent State on here, and same thing.
Yeah, listen,
it's great school, right?
Kent was great.
Yeah.
Really fun. Really, really fun. But I went for fashion, which is one of the things that it's known for.
Yes, my stepdaughter did as well.
Yeah.
For fashion.
Fantastic program. And I joke around about Cleveland, but the people that I met were amazing. Still lifelong friends.
Right.
But no, it was a really good time. And then after I graduated, I moved back to Pittsburgh, got a job at American Eagle Outfitters and as an assistant buyer. And I thought that was the path that I was going to go on, that I was going
fashion
to...
in general.
Yes, fashion in general.
Okay.
I went to school for it. And I figured out quickly that, yes, I'm a creative person, but I think I was creative in a different way that I hadn't anticipated. And what I mean by that is, when you're an assistant buyer, a lot of your responsibilities, you have to be both creative and analytical, in the sense that you need that creativity to trend forecast and to understand what's happening in the marketplace and figure out what people are going to be interested in the future. But then there's a huge analytics aspect to it, where you have to understand what was successful, what wasn't successful, what do I need to change, what do I need to adopt, everything from cut, color, like it's, the details in the clothing and the things that you're buying. And what I figured out was that I was way more interested in the, what it was that we were putting into the stores, how it was performing, and how it was being marketed.
Okay.
And every interaction that I had with our marketing team, with our digital marketing team, I was way more energized than the meetings and conversations. To be honest with you, I wasn't that good at it.
Did you mean the creative part of it?
The trend forecasting because I think that I actually don't know that I was fully ready for that job when I took it on. Because I think people think that buying, because it gets, romanticized in media, right?
Certainly.
All these people grow up thinking that they're going to go work for, some designer, and they're going to buy, and it's just shopping all day.
Do they kind of sell you on that not pipe dream, but that dream at Kent?
Yes. It was really fun, because a lot of the classes were around trend forecasting and around things like that. It was very hyper romanticized. And when I got in there, I realized how hard it was, where it wasn't just, even if I looked at things that I thought were going to be good, right? Like we got into conversations about color forecasting and trend forecasting and, how would you rank, these products that we should buy the most of to the least of, things like that. I found that I don't know if I just wasn't good at it, or I found that I wasn't picking anything that my associate buyer or my buyer were picking.
Okay.
And so it was quickly identified even by them that maybe
did you
it wasn't
feel the
a
industry
fit.
was very fickle?
I don't know about fickle.
Because how about you're basically trying to predict consumer desires, right?
So predicting consumer behavior in general and predicting consumer behavior, I love. And honestly, knowing what I know now and having the industry experience that I have now, if I were to turn around tomorrow and try to be an assistant buyer today, I'd probably be a lot better at it.
Sure.
But I think at the time, coming fresh out of college, thinking it was going to be one thing, and then not anticipating how much work is really involved in work, and thinking it was going to be a little closer to what college was, I kind of screwed up a little bit. Like I wasn't meeting expectations, and I was actually forced out. Like they kind of said, they were like, look, we're not going to fire you. You're a good person, a decent employee, but you're not hitting expectations in this role. And so I was like, oh no. So I quickly started applying a lot of other places.
Okay.
Because I just knew that it wasn't working out. And thankfully, I applied to a position at Dick's Sporting Goods. I believe the original position I applied to was site merchandising.
Okay.
Which site merchandising is basically like you already have an assortment and you arrange it a certain way online. You create assortments online that you believe are going to convert. And just really like optimize the website in that regard. And I got a call from the hiring manager of the SEO team, which SEO stands for search engine optimization. She was like, look, we saw your application for the site merchandising role. We actually want to see if you'd be interested in becoming an SEO specialist. And I'm over here, I'm on the phone with her. I'm like Googling, like, what is SEO? I knew a little bit, right? Like I had like kind of dabbled-ish, if you even want to call it that, but not to the extent where I felt like I could accept a job. But I'm like pretty decent at the art of bullshit. And so it was just like...
Don't forget I know your father.
Sorry, Dad. But thank God I got that skill from him because I really just lucked my way into that job, man. I mean, I told her, and I'm like, again, I'm like on Google, like looking up, I'm like, yeah, this website Moz I visit sometimes, like all this stuff. And she was like, oh, fantastic. I'm like, oh my God, like what am I getting myself into? And, I was honest with her. I'm like, look, like I can learn anything,
right.
And I'm passionate about marketing and digital.
Sure.
And if this is my way into it, yeah, absolutely. And so that's what all I thought it was going to be, is just like maybe a temporary thing that gets me into digital marketing. I wound up just becoming so fascinated with it and falling in love with it. I spent 4 years at Dick's Sporting Goods, getting promoted to SEO analyst, managing half of the Dick's Sporting Goods website, the Golf Galaxy website, and really just working on optimizing the pages. Because what I found was it really tickled this area of my brain that was highly analytical, where I love the concept of data storytelling, where like if somebody is coming to me, my manager or my director, whoever it is, and they would be like, Kaci, visits are down to this page and we don't know why, we don't know what's causing it, what's going on. It just like energizes me to dig into that data and essentially try to tell a story to my manager or my director and say, okay, so they're down 20% because this keyword moved and we're no longer ranked for that term, but there's opportunity with this term because there's this search volume associated with it, and all these people are looking for this product now, so we should shift our efforts here. And I found that I was like pretty good at it. And yeah, I was, I really enjoyed it. And then in 2020, I was hit with the COVID layoffs. And I was absolutely devastated. Like, it broke my heart because, and I still say to this day, Dick's Sporting Goods is an amazing place to work. I mean, I absolutely loved working for that company. And I had friends there. I really felt good in that job. And so I was so upset. And, but again, I got really lucky because I had made a great connection with a friend of mine at this company called Brandify.
Okay.
And Dick's Sporting Goods worked with Brandify. And we used them for what we called like our kind of local landing pages. So like store locator, store description pages. Like if you're going on Google and you're typing Dick's Sporting Goods near me, it's the Google listing, it's the landing page, it's that whole experience to show you like your Robinson Dick's Sporting Goods, right? There's companies in my current company that manage that for massive organizations that have thousands of locations.
So you're saying that the landing page might not be actually part of Dick's website, but that's actually part of your...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we worked...
Interesting.
Yeah, so we worked with Brandify for them to power our pages, help us optimize our presence in Google Maps and different channels like that. And so I reached out to my friend at Brandify and I was like, hey, I know you guys work with a lot of brands. Like I initially hadn't even thought about working for them. And I was like, I know you work with a lot of brands. Do you have anybody you can refer me to? Is there anybody you know hiring for an SEO? You know, what can I do? And he just turned around. He's like, Kaci, come work with us. like this would be such a great place for you to work and all this stuff. And it was, I mean, that layoff
There's some serendipity there, huh?
Yeah. As hard as it hit me, it was the best thing that ever happened in my career. Because since taking that kind of leap over to this industry, and, you know, Brandify was purchased by my current company, Sochi, in 2021. And since then, it has just taken off. I mean, it has been so fun to be a part of. But it has also catapulted my career, my experience, made me really into this professional that I don't know if I would have hit the same kind of targets had I stayed on the trajectory that I was on.
Is it because these firms are like case in point, Dick's is so consumed by selling their merchandise. That's the primary function of them. So what you provide for them in terms of interacting with the public and the sales arm of online sales, they don't have to go hire their own people to do that, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean,
to a degree,
kind of. Yeah, I mean, I think really what it was is, if I were to have stayed on my current trajectory, I was working for a very large company, and large companies like that, you really it takes a lot to get promoted. It takes a lot to get new responsibility. It takes a lot to...
It's a visibility issue, right?
Absolutely. Whereas when I got hired at Brandify, I was one of 100, maybe less. And
timing's everything.
Yeah. Suddenly I had meetings with the CEO. Suddenly I'm, consulting. And I think what was so fun and what really taught me so much to get where I am now is the fact that I work with different industries every single day. One day I log on and I'm dealing with a property management group. Another day I log on and I'm dealing with restaurants, or I'm dealing with massive retailers and, or, the finance sector. And it's so fun for me to find common themes in their problems. I was
just going to ask you that question.
Yeah. It's so fun because and they're more alike than they even think.
Okay.
Right. Like I'll talk to somebody in property management and they're like, oh, this is such a problem in property and I don't know how to solve it. And I'm like, no, I just met with a restaurant yesterday. They're dealing with the same problem. And here's what we did for them. Here's how that tactic might work for you. But yeah, I do not think that I'd be, even, I don't think that I would even have the amount of intelligence that I have today.
Okay.
I feel like I have learned just this crash course of this industry in the past 4 years.
It sounds like there's more diversity in what you're doing now, probably too, than work for one firm.
Oh
right?
Yeah, there's so much diversity. I went from being primarily focused on SEO and having a little bit of my hands in other pots, right? Like I worked closely with our social media team. I worked closely with our paid search team, and other areas of the business. Whereas now, I work for a company that manages both search and social and reputation. And there's a bit of like e-commerce mixed in there because we host landing pages. Right. So I kind of had to become this like all-arching problem solver. Yeah. And I love it. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's also something I think the general public has very little understanding. We type in something, it goes to Google. There's like the first 7 things we see on the first page. We generally don't go to page 2. We pick one of those 7. We go on to there. We assume sometimes we're going right to the website, but maybe there's, like you said, there's another filter that another firm is landing and curating your response and then sending it off. There's so much, I guess I should say, for lack of a better term, there's so much online back end.
Yes.
That the average person searching for a golf club, by the time they get to their spot to buy the club, so much has gone into that.
Well, and that's what I think is so interesting about working for Soci is I work with these brands to help them manage every part of that. So we specialize primarily in that like hyper local space.
What does that mean?
So what I mean by that is if you look at, we'll use Dick's Sporting Goods as an example, a brand like Dick's Sporting Goods, they have their national presence, right? Like they have their own like national Instagram accounts or, blogs or things that they put out there that are owned at the corporate level. And it's still owned at the corporate level, what I do, but there's been this intense need, especially after COVID, I would say it really boomed after COVID, where these brands need to interact with customers where they are at the micro level. So they need maybe a Facebook page for every single location that they have. They need to make sure that this was well before COVID a problem, but they need to make sure that they have Google listings for every single store location. And it's not as simple as just setting them up and then never visiting them again. There's things that change. You actually can put strategy behind it.
So wait a second. You're saying if you search let's just say Walmart, and it brings you specifics about Walmart in Moon Township. You're saying that first spot you're going to might not actually be part of Walmart's website.
It's kind of confusing, I guess, how I'm wording that. So it is still technically part of their website. So the Dick's Sporting Goods, like the local pages, they are still on the same domain. Okay. But the hosting of it is potentially run by another company.
And the workflow behind those pages is not probably part of the Walmart system.
Well, and it's done in partnership with the brand, right? So absolutely. So it's a marketing technology platform that I work for. Okay. And it basically allows these organizations to get this data out in bulk. Because if you're Walmart, you have like thousands of locations. Right. You can't possibly manage that data. Walmart maybe can, right? Like let's be real. They
do crazy things in Arkansas.
They've got intense teams. But most brands are like, look, could I go and hire a lot of people to manage this hyperlocal data that I have, these store hours, these, some pages even feature like, manager information and honestly, it's not even just the pages. It's creating an ecosystem. It's connecting the dots between the local Facebook, the local Instagram. Maybe they have a Twitter account, X, whatever.
That's kind of what you do, though, right? You are connecting the dots and making sure these companies do.
That's exactly what we do, and we work to kind of show that benefit of maintaining that brand reputation and presence in all of these micro moments and channels, because they're not so micro. I mean, it's especially Google. I mean, Google listings are, I don't even think we think about it half the time. Like I pulled up the address in Google Maps to get here.
We're in there.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just first nature to us. Like it's our instinct now at this point to go to Google. There's just
we're conditioned.
Sure. But how would we do it without it? How do we get anywhere anymore? We're going to print a MapQuest, right? Like it's so
be nice now.
Hey, I do recall going on family vacations and holding the MapQuest up to make sure that.
What about those before the web? We had these things called triptychs that were the AAA would have, and it would be on paper, and you'd flip through the leaf every 30 miles. There'd be another page you'd flip.
Yeah. Well, I remember I had one of my graduation gifts in high school was the TomTom.
Oh my God, I remember those things.
Yeah, because I don't even know what phone I had at the time.
You stuck it on your dashboard?
Yeah, I think I had a BlackBerry.
Yeah, I had BlackBerry. Yeah.
So I love my BlackBerry. I wish I could go back.
Yeah,
but
what a mismanaged company that was.
I know. God. I need to watch there's a documentary or something on it I want to watch. Yeah. But I remember those. It was so unreliable over time because the data didn't update.
Right.
And so I think everybody quickly learned that the data needs to update.
In real time.
Physical locations are living, breathing things. And imagine how hard it is for companies that have thousands of locations to actually update and know okay, this location is closed, this is going on. You need technology to do that.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When do you think, roughly speaking, that happened, that they were able to, because I consider that to be hyper-local, but also in real time. Mm-hmm. When did that kind of start? When did that hyper-local possibility start to happen, would you say?
I don't know exactly when Google My Business started. It's called Google Business Profile now, but... Right. I think that there was...
They're infuriating, by the way, because I can't get anything changed, and they send you mailers to confirmation, and they never send the mailing card, and it's just nuts.
I can help you with that.
I'm going to ask for some help
I can help you with that.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I think that it evolved over time. I also think probably what happened in Google's case is Google probably saw an influx of people searching for things like near me with the qualifier. Right. And so, because Google came first, right? The search engine came first, and then Google Maps came later.
They weren't the first, though.
No, they were not.
Web crawler and Alta Vista. I can't tell you how many search engines were at the beginning.
I remember, I think I was in
Excite.
Second grade, and we had our computer lab. They were the giant MacBooks.
Yeah.
Well, we had the big MacBooks, but and they taught us how to conduct a search. And I don't think it was Google. I think it was Yahoo or something like that at the time. Or I think there was another one that I can't think of the name. But the searches, there was a format that we had to learn. They were teaching us this in second or third grade.
Netscape.
Yeah, where it was word plus other word plus.
Yes.
And that's how you had to conduct a search.
Correct. In the very beginning. Yeah.
Well, now it's crazy because Google you can type gibberish in there, have a million typos, and Google knows what you mean. Google knows everything.
Yeah, you're going to talk about that because there are some very unsettling things that happen when I observe my phone in reference to conversations I was having with someone 20 minutes ago that somehow magically seem to appear in search threads. And we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We take so much for granted. Google is now like Kleenex was when I was growing up. Kleenex is a tissue. Facial tissue, but we know it's Kleenex.
Yeah.
So Google is the internet for a lot of people, especially your age and younger.
Oh yeah. Well, Google actually, they have the market share. It doesn't matter from an age group perspective. This is, I want to say they own almost 90% or something like that of the market share.
You're saying that Bing and the rest of them are all below 1%? That is insane. They're not talking about Microsoft. Yeah,
when you look at the actual users, and I'm talking about all properties. So we're talking about Google Maps, YouTube, things like that.
Right.
You're looking at almost 90% of the share.
Wow.
And then you got Bing, which probably, they're picking up the pennies.
That's crazy, though.
And then there's small fries like DuckDuckGo or
what
things like that. Their whole concept was that they aren't going to
sell your info,
but it's even more than that. They don't want to track you in any kind of way. But here's the thing: is I think people get so afraid of this concept of being tracked, or even my dad sometimes. I think he made it. I got him an Alexa, and he was like, "Who's going to be listening to me now?" And I'm like, "Dad, The reality is maybe someone. Like, it's, you know, I think that we get so over afraid of these channels having our information. But the reality is that as consumers, we benefit from it a lot of the time. Like, it
curates our life.
It curates our life. And when I conduct a Google search, Google knows what I searched for yesterday.
Yep.
It knows
Makes things easy.
It's all hyper personalized. And I think that we as consumers crave that hyper personalization.
Well, we've also been conditioned to have it.
Yeah.
So if you would take it away, I mean, if you used, my guess is going to be, if you dropped Google tomorrow and used this DuckDuckGo for a period of a month, I think frustration would set in because you're used to having stored passwords. You're used to having all these things that make your web experience seamless.
Well, and there's this element of personalization that I think most people don't realize. If I conduct a Google search for, I don't know, say I was in the market for treadmills, right? And I conducted a Google search for treadmills. My personal results wouldn't be guaranteed to look like yours, even though we're searching for the same thing.
Right.
It's because Google knows my browsing history. And so it knows what I probably want to click on or what brands I would be most interested in. Now, it doesn't change that much. Like, the algorithms, for the most part, you can get an average understanding of like what the search results look like. But there are going to be some differences and inconsistencies between my results and your results almost every time.
Wow. So we are the product, right? Us humans, we are the ultimate product.
Yeah.
Our information, but everything that comprises us, from our medical records to just everything that every time we interact with, I mean, I won't talk in spiritual, but every time it seems like we talk to the machine being like, you know, a non-human, every time we interact with that in some capacity, we're leaving a trail of data, which is then harvested and then gathered and it's put into a little file that has your name on it and you're there.
But the reality is we kind of like it to a certain degree. I don't think that we realized how much we liked it until I think one of the biggest pieces of evidence that we do like it is the success of TikTok. Because TikTok's whole algorithm is that concept of the For You page.
Okay, help me out.
Yeah.
I don't have TikTok. It's the only social media platform and that and Threads I do not have. So.
Yeah. TikTok, to me, I think it's so fascinating. Like, I really hope it doesn't get banned because there's so much just information on it and you can't always trust it. Don't get me wrong. There's also a lot of misinformation, but there's misinformation everywhere on the web, and you have to make sure that before you really form an opinion on something, disclaimer for everybody out there, before you really form an opinion on something, you have to make sure that you trust where it's coming from and that you check some sources on it, right? So just want to put that out there. But TikTok has just this wealth of collective knowledge, and it's just these content, like user-generated content.
Okay, I get it. Before we go deep on that, explain to me why, like, the layman would come back and say, well, we already have that with YouTube. We already have that scrolling style with Instagram. Why do we need this third one? Because
TikTok has done something with their algorithm that I think is even more unique. Like, they were able to unlock something that I think Instagram wishes that they could have figured out.
Okay.
Where it learned so much about the individual user that For You page learns the more you use the app. And so it knows how long I spend watching a video. It knows if I liked it, if I commented on it, if I shared it. But even beyond that, it figures out what I am interested in. So if I'm scrolling through and I get on a kick of learning how to make sourdough bread, and I see one video and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I was interested in. Like, I'm so happy that I stumbled upon this. Suddenly my feed, it's not going to happen every video, but I'm going to notice a lot more quick hit videos that are going to talk about making bread and then maybe baking in general. And then it'll wonder, like, okay, does she maybe just like cooking? Is she, and your feed will suddenly become dedicated to that.
So it's very intuitively predictive?
Yes. Very, very much so. Very much so. And the other thing, too, that I think gets really appealing about this platform is the human experience element of it. So like there's TikTok, but you know that people post things and Instagram. You know that people post things and they apply filters and they Instagram is this very like curated photos of my life, right? Whereas I think TikTok did something where it felt way more authentic, where people could just go on, and it blew up during the pandemic where everybody was craving human interaction. I mean, I'm an extrovert, and the pandemic was exceptionally hard for me in that regard.
I totally get it.
And so that just sense of community and like seeing other people that you could relate to, especially during the pandemic, people posting, I think I posted a video at one point where I was just like, is anybody just like bored with everything now? Like, I can't watch TV anymore. It's boring. Like, I hit this point in the pandemic where I was so exhausted, and I posted it to TikTok, just me randomly sharing my thoughts. And random people I didn't know were like, oh, I can totally relate. Like, I get it.
Finds that commonality.
Yeah, it builds this, like, sense of community. And, you know, if I don't want to go too far into my conspiracy theories here, but I think that that's why, one of the reasons why it's a little contested right now from a government perspective is I think that people are kind of waking up on this platform in a different way that they haven't on other social media channels, where we're able to kind of talk about and inform each other on like these issues and deeper things potentially happening in government. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists on TikTok, but it creates great conversation.
Is the dialogue more authentic there?
I think so. I think it is. I mean, it can be relatively polarizing, right? Like somebody will post.
They all are that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's reflective of the current state of the country.
You made a good comment that basically before we started, we were having a discussion on people's interpretations of those on the extremes of philosophy, philosophical belief, I should say. They look to try to determine what people are.
Yeah,
that leap. Well, they must think this way, or they must be this way. And then, of course, that turns into, they're going to vote for this one. It goes right back to the political thing. We were laughing like people are going to look in on this in the end, and they're going to label you and I on one or the other side of the pond, guaranteed.
Yeah,
there's no matter what we do, we could sit there and just stare at each other for like an hour. And they would look at our eyeballs and go, okay, he's got those shifty Democratic eyeballs. You know, that's how crazy it is. And
society has forced us into these two camps and basically said, if you're not this, then you're this. And I think that's why one of honestly the many reasons why I even get drawn to TikTok from a personal standpoint, and then even working with brands, why they should get involved in TikTok, is that I lost my train of thought real quick.
We were talking about the benefits of.
I remember where I was going. Sorry. So, like I was saying, one of the things that I like about it is you have these in society. People are forcing you to kind of have these two sides, right? Okay. What I've seen happen in a lot of ways on TikTok is this like open dialogue in like a short form video format, where people are actually not over dramatizing things too much one side or the other. I think there is a lot more opportunity for discussion. Like I see so much more than not a lot of people saying like, well, I typically think this way, but on this issue, it's really driving me crazy. Like it just, I don't know what it is. Like there's been this discovery, at least on my For You page, right? And maybe that's because this is just how I feel. I'm sure others maybe who feel a little more polarized on one side or the other, their For You pages are going to agree with them, that confirmation bias. But on mine, because I don't necessarily feel that way, I get a lot of interesting discourse. And it makes me hopeful in some ways to see that other people think that same way, where it actually isn't that simple. These issues are complex in nature, and it's okay to have discussions around them. But again, at least that's my For You page. I would imagine others not so much.
Do you? Well, let me ask you this question: why do you think that that they want to ban it?
Well,
the real reasons they want to ban it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's some truth to data security. Absolutely, I think you have to be concerned to a certain degree with China's involvement in our data security and, any kind of foreign adversary that we have. Mm-hmm. So I think those concerns are very real. And then there's other things that I question, right, where I think that TikTok can be dangerous to some of the political parties that want us to continue arguing with each other mm-hmm. and to continue. And don't get me wrong, those arguments absolutely happen on TikTok. But I think that people are kind of waking up on this platform a bit.
Okay.
At least, again, that's my experience on it. And so it does make me wonder the motivation there. I think they have less control over the narrative in that specific channel. And I think it does scare politicians and even just different like government programs and things like that, because they have less control over the narrative.
Okay. So do you think that the TikTok company is not curating the political discourse?
So,
because I think Facebook, quite frankly,
does. I would agree with you on that. I think TikTok, because here's the thing, like, I don't feel like it is necessarily trying to, I mean, there's definitely shadow bans that occur. There's definitely, you can tell when somebody's account, maybe if they're violating guidelines. But I mean, I still get on my page a lot of both sides of the coin. It doesn't seem like when I'm on that platform, TikTok is taking a side, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I definitely, absolutely feel that, how do I say this? And I can't say how long, but when I look back at Facebook, I've always thought it leaned to the left, but not hard until the last 5 or 6 years. It really seems to lean that way. I don't think it's conspiratorial. I think it's like anything else. If you and I create a business, the business, and we have success with it, the business is probably maybe not, no matter how hard we fight it, Kaci, it's eventually going to reflect who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, I get it. You put a bunch of left-thinking people in a room and they have a successful business, it's probably going to, the image is going to reflect that, right? That's kind of the human experience, right?
No, I get that. And I don't disagree with you per se. I think that there is something, though, in algorithms in general.
So you're saying it can be programmed not to be?
Like, yeah, I think that I also think it's these companies know that we like confirmation bias.
Certainly. So
we're not going to see, if I feel a certain way, yeah, I mean, they want to serve up content that we're going to interact with. And so if they can't do that, I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of the algorithm. Like I don't want to get too deep, I guess, into, whether Facebook is left or right leaning or anybody like that. I mean, and
how do you really determine? Because I'm going to guess if you are an ultra extreme person on each side, they're going to curate your feed to give you confidence. So
exactly,
what is the actual corporation's opinion?
Exactly. So it's like maybe the corporation leans one way or another, and maybe there's something to be said about like filters and things like that. But at the end of the day, your experience on that social media app is self-curated.
Yeah, got it.
And it also, Facebook is going to show you anything that will get you to comment, like, share, interact.
It's going to try to trigger you in some capacity.
Well, yeah, it's actually been accused of doing that, where it knows that some of these posts that people in your friend group have might trigger you because of the way that maybe you reacted. Yeah. It wants that discourse.
Do you have an opinion on why you think it is so difficult for us humans to simply scroll by things that we disagree with? Why can't we do that? And the other part of that question I have for you is, maybe it's kind of a statement, but I want to ask you, did you ever hear a story that the developers at Meta, I think Instagram was a standalone company initially, right? There was developers at Instagram that brought in there were people at Instagram that brought in developers from the gaming industry and learned about how slot machines work on the human mind and how that scrolling effect seems to be addictive to the human. Have you heard that before?
I don't know if I've heard that exact study, but I do know that there's something to be said about that nature of UI that I have heard is definitely enticing. Of it's hard to stop scrolling once you start scrolling. Right. Right. If you have to actually go through the action of clicking on tabs or clicking to things, that's much different than this behavior. Okay. So I could definitely see that. And I think your question was why is it so hard for us to
scroll past things we disagree with?
Because I think, again, we're looking for that confirmation. I also think as a society, the internet has made us feel like we have to have an opinion on everything, and that if we don't share that opinion, if it bubbles up inside of us and we keep that opinion to ourselves, that we're doing a disservice to ourselves somehow. Really? That's fascinating. Or that we're not, I think the other thing too is that concept of keyboard warriors. Right, where we feel like we're making a difference if we post about something, if we call out an injustice that we feel is an injustice, or take a stand, take an opinion. We feel like we're doing something. Okay. The reality is, I don't know that we are. Right,
or doing anything good in reality.
Right, I think that we've lost sight of what taking action on the things that we believe in actually means. Now, there's the other side of that coin, though, where there's definitely been movements online that have succeeded because they've been online. I mean, it happens all the time on TikTok. Even very simple things that I see where there will be a video recording of somebody shoplifting, and you get people with big followings to repost this video and say, hey, help us find this person. The internet can help serve justice in that way and help get things done in that way. And I think that it's excellent that we've been able to do that. But I don't think that me, not really having a following, right? And posting on Facebook a paragraph about how I feel about certain issues is making as much of an impact as some people feel like it does. Okay. I think some people feel like they have to state their opinion because it's the only way to get people rallied up and get people to listen to you. But the reality is, humans, it's in our nature to argue. You're going to get more people against you half the time than Yeah. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. And I don't, so much to say. So I heard it said 15, 20 years ago when the internet was relatively younger, that a guy said to me personally, he says, hey, and I'm not saying he made this up, but he just said, hey, what's great about the internet? 2 important things. I said, okay, what are they? He goes, the internet gives a platform to everybody. Yeah. Equally. This is probably before social media. Yeah. Right? But at the time. Mm-hmm. And he says that the bad thing about it is the internet gives a platform to everybody equally.
Yeah, and
it's so true.
It is. And it's really taken, I feel like when I was younger, a lot of people didn't want to talk about politics. I feel like it was a weird faux pas to say who you were voting for and how you felt on these things. Yeah. And now it feels like you're wrong for not.
Yeah, it became, for lack of a better phrase, politics became sexy in the social vernacular. Yes. Whereas, and I've said this so many times on this show, I'll say it again. Growing up, the only thing I knew about politics was every year around, March or so, someone would knock on my door and I'd have to get up from eating my cereal and go get a little brochure and a little button and say, give this to your parents. Okay. Yeah. And then I'd throw it in the trash. You had a local politician asking you to vote for them. Yeah. And you knew every 4 years there was a thing on, and there was, I think the conventions were televised and all that, but you just didn't have it in your consciousness all the time.
Well, and what they've done, and it's not that voting, I mean, government, being involved and passionate about these issues, it is important. And there are channels and there are ways that are actively going to get things done. I just feel like the internet is a really shaky place for me because while, yes, there's been evidence that certain conversations that happen online can help make change, I also think that it's made all of us feel this intense sense of responsibility that shouldn't necessarily be on our shoulders to advocate for something, to stand for something and let everybody know that that's what we stand for. And if you don't agree with me, then you're the problem.
Yes, I would agree.
And it's such a weird balance because I don't want to say that...
I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah, and like I don't want to say that the internet isn't effective for change because it is. It absolutely is, and social media is effective for change. But I think that we as humans need to take a breath and stop feeling the weight of all of it on our shoulders to solve all of the problems. You know, like us talking about it all the time and debating it all the time, it's hurting us like internally. Like it's too much of a burden for us to take on.
You articulated that very well. That's exactly how I have felt for a long time. But it's been a slow burn because really someone who loved the web from the moment I'd logged into my 8K baud modem to growing a business on there and watching things happen. I just love the idea of, I was so curious as a young person, and I'm like, wait a second, I can type into this machine, ask it any question, I can get the information.
Yeah.
Before the web, you had to seek out things you were interested in. You literally had to go to a library, find someone that was supposedly knowledgeable, but now anything was possible. But what I've noticed over time is that it has created societal weight because issues that are bounced around, there somehow seems to be an expectation put on the user that you need to be an expert in everything that comes at you. You need to have a response or an opinion on everything.
And it also makes you feel almost like a bad person if you are misinformed on something or if you're just ignorant to something. I mean, just this morning I was on TikTok and some creator posted, I visited Cambodia and I learned for the first time about this genocide that happened. I don't even know if it's considered a genocide or something that happened in the 1970s that I didn't know about. Nobody taught me about this, and this is huge. Like, why didn't we learn about this in school? And I'm like looking at it and I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. And it just it's that weight too, where it's him phrasing it is, why doesn't anybody know this? Why doesn't anybody talk about this? Where it's like, well, human beings right now are consuming information at the fastest rate that we've ever consumed information in our entire existence.
Are we physically built to do it?
You know what's really interesting? I think a decent amount of us, maybe. I think society in some degree struggles with it, right? Like I think we've seen a lot of people suffering from depression, suffering from even like social anxieties, things like that. Like I feel like I see that very prominent. And I do wonder if some of that is societally driven, that this is just too much for us to keep up with all the time and that we feel like we have to fit a certain mold and we can't fit that mold. And so we get anxious about it and we, but I'm very impressed with humanity. I mean, yeah, it's insane what this era of people, the change that we've gone through at such a rapid pace that no other era of humanity has ever experienced this type of change at this rate. And the reason why I say that, yes, I think we can is because it's moving into the world of AI and it's moving rapidly into these things that are just mind-boggling. And I don't think that we would be advancing as fast as we are as a society and taking advantage of this data, even though it is overwhelming at times. It's also beautiful what we as humans have been able to do with it and how we're using it and how the opportunities that can come.
Let's talk about AI.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it because I have a very workman's knowledge of it. I know I've been told by many people that it's the next thing, like the web, the pre-web and the after-web. That was a big, just a seismic shift in society, which had a slow burn to get to social media. But this is the next thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a hard time understanding how I get it that it's a thing, but I don't know how it's going to have a major impact in our search engines, in terms of the consumer using it, and then how it translates to business outside of the fear of losing our jobs.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on what do you see? What if you had to define AI, and then what do you see the short-term benefits to humanity?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are these small scale things that we're going to notice right away.
Okay.
Right. So like you kind of said in search, there's already something called SGE. That's Google's essentially like AI results that, right now I think it's just an opt-in program. I don't think it's rolled out to general search results. But what's really cool about it is AI generated results, and it seeks to answer almost in like a conversationalist kind of way the questions that you're asking. So it's a little bit different than a traditional algorithm. Okay. So that's a very interesting thing.
Okay.
Obviously there's the GPTs out there, right? Yes. Where you can get information and, it's input questions. Right. No.
The photos they generate have like 3 or 4 hands on them at one time. Like it's a little weird.
Yeah. It's funny because I was speaking at an AI conference at Pitt a couple weeks ago, and one of the other speakers in the conference has a company that their whole thing is that they will generate images for social media use. And he's like, yeah, we have this generator. You plug in what you want and you upload maybe a picture of a sneaker, and we can get you like campaign photos back. And I asked the question, I'm like, well, what do you do about the human element, right? Like AI, you can tell usually, unless it's really good AI, that it's a generated image.
Yes, at this point.
Yeah, at this point. But there are more advanced photo AIs that it is very hard to tell the difference.
I've seen some.
But yeah, I asked him the question. I'm like, what do you do about that? And he's like, yeah, you'd be surprised. Like you can refine it. It was kind of like a roundabout answer, but
because it's not quite ready yet.
That's kind of my take on it. It depends, I think, how much you want to invest in it.
Okay.
Does the AI technology technically exist? Sure. I think we're a couple years away from it being readily available to everybody, at least from the image generation front, in like an affordable way to generate AI images at scale like that are actually like believable. I could be entirely wrong. If that guy's listening to this podcast and is like, what? Don't get me wrong. The tool was so impressive. It was really, really cool.
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's stay in the art realm for a second before we get into the effects it's going to have on business and society. Because old brain, I'll be all over the place. My personal fear is that on the smaller scale is that art as I know art to be, whether it's the art of a human expression, whether it's visual arts, whether it's music, cinema, the AI interacting with that can be complementary where it's at now, maybe, but I can see the AI taking over to the point where we may start to devalue the human expression in those mediums. So
I'm pretty passionate on this topic here because I sing, I play the guitar, I consider myself an artist to some degree, right? Because I think that art is an inherently like human experience. Even if it's being generated on the computer, even if you're a digital designer, things like that, it's still being done through human expression. And I just don't think AI qualifies in that. And so I'm very passionate and very hopeful that over time we will make sure to protect artists in any of those fields, whether it's visual or musical.
Do you honestly believe that that's going to happen?
I hope that it does. I'm hopeful that it will. I don't know that it will.
Call me a pessimist, but I think that the almighty dollar will rule over human expression.
Which I think is going to be a sad thing if that's what occurs. Because, I've already heard, I can log online and hear a Harry Styles song that he never sang. It's just his voice singing a different song.
There's all kinds of new Beatles songs out there.
Oh, yeah. And it's to me, I hate that. Like, I'm so interested in how humans, like, I'm so impressed with people who make music and people who make art and paint and draw
because it's
and
organic.
sketch.
Organic. Yeah. It's a human. It's actually human.
And I think that art needs to be protected. Whether, I mean, I know art is profitable, unfortunately. Fortunately, unfortunately, right? And so people are going to try to capitalize on that. And, you know, like you said, the almighty dollar might win there.
Or let me ask you this. The other danger I see is that, well, what we have done with music the past 20 years, 25 years, is we have, as humans, devalued music from a monetary standpoint. Now, we still value it because we like to listen to it and ingest it, but we've torn, just for lack of a better phrase, we've torn the ass out of the revenue of music with downloading. It just happened. That was technology. It was going to happen. Yeah,
streaming and
So we have, as consumers of music, we have told the industry that we do not really monetarily value. It's disposable to us. It's just something we're going to use and discard. We just don't buy tangible music. We don't hold and feel it and look at it and open up the cover. We don't do that anymore. It's different now. Now, maybe that's part of the technological advancement. I get it. But we've told the industry, your new music, we might enjoy it. I mean, we might even listen to it once in a while, but we're not going to pay you for it. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, a lot of that started even way back with like LimeWire.
Of course.
You know, like
late
when
90s,
when I was, you know, downloading files on my parents' computer, probably putting all kinds of terrible viruses on it, right?
For sure.
And it's because I wanted to listen to music. I loved music, but I wasn't going to pay my iTunes.
Free. Yeah. Okay.
You know, and so the
genie's out of the box.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying for sure. That doesn't mean though, I mean, I think there's definitely alternative revenue streams which artists are definitely
they can tour.
Finding, right? I mean, and touring, I mean, people will pay a lot of money. I mean, we saw that with Taylor Swift's Era Tour.
No question.
People will pay a ton of money. I will pay a ton of money to go see an artist that I am passionate about. And then the other thing too is there's been an interesting resurgence of vinyl.
Yes.
That especially, I even think it's motivated by younger generations.
It's like a nostalgia thing.
Yeah, but like Gen Z is very interested in that physical. I have my own record player, and it's actually fun for me too. Like I'll buy new artist music on vinyl, but it's way more fun for me to go to record stores and find some classics.
Oh yeah, well I think that experience is finding what my generation loved about the idea of taking $10 and buying this album and having liner notes and having this, you knew what it smelled like. It was more important to a kid to carry their albums than their school books. That was a different era.
Yeah.
That's how we ingested media. Same thing with, you know, it was like a VHS tapes and beta tapes, and then there was CDs. I mean, there was a tangible thing there you could read and you could, you know, we don't do that anymore.
No, I mean, I remember how fun it was when I had even I had a cassette player, and I was probably like 6, right? And I had my Britney Spears Oops, I Did It Again on cassette. And I played it constantly, rewind, play all the time. And I would take out the whole information about it. And I mean, and then it was CDs, and it was the same thing. I was just obsessed. Every time we went to the mall, I had to go and buy a CD, and you just read everything about it in there cover to cover. And it was so fun. And, you know, I do still get that excitement in streaming. Like Ariana Grande, I'm a fan of hers, and she just launched a new album, and it's so fun for me to just like take that time, set it aside, and listen to it the whole way through. But
not enough people are paying for it though.
But people aren't paying for it.
So let's bridge this. So you have all that happened the last 25 years without AI.
Yeah.
So at least we knew that was still Ariana Grande recording that song, although we're not going to pay for it, but we know it's real. It's really her. Now you're going to enter into this area where, I mean, and you can bridge it over to movies and television, if television even survives.
Yeah.
It's like the human brilliance of Al Pacino.
Yeah.
We value it, but go 2 generations from now, they're not going to value it. This AI generated character looks and acts just like a human being. I mean, you can tell at that point you're going to not be able to distinguish an AI generated from a.
Yes.
They could create characters that have all this personality that part of the public will fall in love with, and that will be their new Al Pacino, but it won't be a human.
So, yes, but I think that humans still crave human experience and human experiences.
I hope.
And I think that that's why people are so afraid of AI too, to a certain degree, regardless of the jobs conversation and the
we'll get there.
The fears associated with AI and what it might be capable of and things like that. But I think people are also afraid of it because they're afraid that it is going to eliminate things that should be inherently human. And so with that kind of fear, I mean, it'll be interesting to see like what Gen Alpha. My kids are Gen Alpha, and then the generation after that is, I think it starts next year where it's going to be Gen Beta.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what their thoughts are on it.
What's your gut tell you? Like if you have to look 2 generations ahead, and even though it might horrify you to say it, what does your gut tell you?
I don't know. My gut still tells me that humans still want human experience. And they still want human interactions. I think it's the corporations that are going to make it very difficult for us to be able to tell the difference because it's profitable and because they know that they can push a lot of content out there. But look at one of the best examples for this, I think, is look at what's kind of happening to like Marvel. Mm-hmm. Whereas for a few years there, they were just on top of the world. Now it feels like half their movies are written with AI. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know what's going on, right? Like and you can tell that they're not investing the same type of dollars into the visuals and into the artists that really put these great films together.
There's some storylines that are reflecting societal changes at the moment. I think have not worked real well for them the last couple of movies. I
agree with you on that. I do think that they are branching into, like, I don't think that every single media company needs to go focus hyper in on these issues to get the viewership. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. But it creates that dialogue for discourse, though.
It does.
It
does. Unfortunately. But I guess kind of where I was going with that, though, is people are calling them out.
Yeah.
Because you can tell
it's like animated.
You can tell that the quality isn't there.
But are we just not there yet, though, is my thing, though. Is as the AI continues to merge, like... I have a very good friend of mine who's been on this AI thing for a while, and he's just showed me some photographs because he keeps dialing in on, like, what are we really starting to see photographs that are created that really look human. He showed me a couple recently that I thought that was a model there in a swimsuit standing there, and I really blew it up, and it was a very detailed photograph that we blew it up on the screen, and once in a while you'll see like a weird finger or something, or like sometimes an extra finger growing out of here. But it was it's so real. Perfect, Kaci.
I took a BuzzFeed quiz where it was like, can you tell which of these photos are real and which are AI? I failed it. Wow. Epically. I could not tell the difference.
And we're at the infancy of it.
I know. And so I guess like... maybe I do consider myself...
Well, you're hopeful.
I'm a hopeful. I'm an optimist.
And I'm hopeful too. But I'm also jaded to a degree because I've been around on the planet long enough to see that the almighty dollar has done wonderful. The use of the almighty dollar has done wonderful things for our world for a long time. But there's a lust for it at times too, and it tends to supersede the human experience.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. But I think that even if it means humans have to pivot to other forms of expression, they're always going to find ways to create and to have that expression. And I mean, the danger is going to come from whether society can tell the difference or not. Absolutely. But I do think that there are definitely going to be laws around this that come out
I think so.
To protect.
It could create two different markets too. Like if you could have something called these are AI generated movies, and you'll have a market for that, and they might be less expensive. But here are authentic human movies,
exactly,
or vice versa. That might happen.
I mean, you see that kind of separation of value in a lot of different industries. The first thing that's popping into my head is like the whole concept of like buying organic and buying inorganic. Like it's more expensive to buy organic, but people see the value and the benefit potentially to the health side of those things, right?
Correct. Yeah, that may happen. I just then the next before we get to the jobs portion, let me ask you this, more of a societal question. Do you see any danger with society in general when over the next couple of years AI proliferates, and of course it's going to try to be usurped by some dastardly people, hopefully a small amount, but to create circumstances that look so real or feel so real that a portion of our population doubts the reality they find themselves in, or starts to really conflate the visual reality or the quote-unquote virtual reality with this right here.
Yeah.
And they start doubting everything they experience during the day. That goes for who their leaders are, who their law enforcement is, who their neighbor is. We just doubt everything we encounter. And if we get to that point, how are we going to function?
I mean, isn't that the question of the century? You know, I hear you. I could see that happening. But, you know, I guess when you kind of started that question off, my brain was going in one direction. I'm trying to think what it was you said that really triggered it. And I think it was around the...
Well,
sorry, I kind of...
No,
it was,
okay.
Something you said at the beginning had me, but I can't...
We used to laugh. When I was a young person, we would laugh at our senior citizens because you'd have an elderly grandparent that would be, you know, they'd see something on television and they would absolutely think it's truth.
Yeah.
And we used to laugh at them. Oh, they saw it on television, it's got to be true. We would laugh at that, but transpose that now into AI.
Yeah.
A good portion of their society is going to be fooled or at least confused as to what reality is.
So what I was going to say is I think that's kind of already happening.
It's starting
Isn't that already happening?
I think...
right?
But it's not as bad as it could be.
No. And I think that the people who are out there manipulating, because it's definitely... we are being manipulated as a society into feeling a certain way. I think that there are a lot of intelligent people that recognize that that's happening and are trying to have more, original thought, but I think like a good majority of people don't even realize just how claws deep, the powers that be are already in our train of thought. And so, yes, I think that if AI was put into the wrong hands, right, and really used, it probably already is to some degree, right, to continue to manipulate the people. Yeah, that's a real problem. We just have to hope, that we figure it out. And I do think that a number of people are kind of starting to wake up. I actually had this discussion with my dad when I was picking up my kids today, because I told him that I was coming here. I was like, we're going to talk a little bit about TikTok and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the thing that I feel when I log on at this point is that other people are feeling it too. That other people are kind of starting to wake up too and question everything. The videos that I see in my For You page right now is full of a lot of other people like me who even are just posting about shopping in the grocery store and how all of these products are for the most part owned by mega corporations, and these mega corporations who have special interests in X, Y, and Z and, all this stuff. And there's this whole movement to really invest our time and our money into independently owned things. And that's just one example, but I learned a lot of that in TikTok as a channel. Sure. And so I do think that that's going to kind of be the battle, right? But,
so people push back at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to believe that. I just call it pessimism, but I think we've proven that we are, to this point, very easy to manipulate.
Oh yeah.
And I can't see that slowing down. If you make the technology even more real, like case in point would be 5 years from now, if the AI gets so good that dastardly people could create a cinema quality clip of like 3 minutes showing the president being assassinated, where it looks literally like it came off of CNN, and then they have the method to quickly put it out there and spread it.
Yeah.
I can see a good portion of the population being confused enough to actually believe that happened. 100%. No matter other channels will come in and say no, but we will start to doubt every single thing.
And that is exactly why it needs to be regulated. It has to be.
How's that happen?
I mean, we will figure it out. Because here's the thing: is like we create regulations around everything. There's laws every other day being pitched to, regulate us as a society in ways that maybe they should or should not be regulating us. But I do firmly believe that AI is one of those things that it should be.
I think it absolutely has to be. I don't think we can survive if it's not. If there's not controls in place. Let me put it this way. I don't believe that if we don't have a mechanism in place that enables us to walk over and pull the plug out of the wall.
Yeah.
And it's oversimplification, but if we don't have the ability to do that forever, we got to have some planned obsolescence for this quote unquote AI thing just in case.
Yeah. I do want to say that I actually believe that there is far more good than bad
in the world.
In the world in general,
okay.
But when it comes to AI,
I would agree with you.
I think there's way more opportunity, things that I don't even think we have a full grasp on just yet. AI, in theory, could teach us how to solve a lot of the world's problems. It's going to teach us
cure cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing is like it's not going to be able the business side of it, right? Like the people who are profiting from the cancer industry, the people who are profiting from even like the automobile industry
right.
and all these things, like they're not going to be able to fight it. AI, somebody's going to get their hands on it. They're going to figure out the most effective way to create sustainable vehicles that are good for the environment. They're going to figure out ways to solve world hunger and how to grow our food in a healthy way, how to cure cancer, how to, heck, I bet if we turned to AI and flooded it with all this information about historical governments, AI would probably pump out, here is the perfect format that every country should follow to run their country in an ethical and efficient way.
It would take generations before.
Our politicians would never let it happen.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like I think that's really out of the box thinking. But how many generations ahead? Yeah. Like case in point, like you can't understand the childhood I went through, right?
Yeah.
And people that are 16 right now will not understand your childhood. So as every generation goes, they lose a little bit of understanding of the prior. They hear things, but they don't really know it. Once we get to that generation that has always had AI since they were born, a developed version of AI, the human experience might be so far degraded at that point that they're not even going to know what the human experience even means.
Maybe, and maybe it just becomes something different. Because at the end of the day, AI was created by humans.
Yeah,
right?
So was the bomb.
Well, yeah.
You've seen Oppenheimer, right?
Actually, it's on my list.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, yes, you're absolutely right. But I think that it's going to get into good hands and it's going to get into bad hands.
Do we have the ability to predict it getting into bad hands and put mechanisms in place to prevent that, or at least have a world-saving response if they try something?
Probably. At the end of the day, it only is a system of large language models that follows directives put in place.
Okay, let's talk about that. You don't think it has the capacity to be sentient at any point in time? Because I have no idea. I don't really even know what sentient means. But I mean,
I was going to say I don't know if I know enough about that thought process, about what
thinking for itself,
sentient. Yeah, what my understanding of it today is that it looks for just a whole. It's basically just a giant matrix of associations, and so it is going to take like. And this is on like a very simple, I guess, kind of grasp of the concept, right? Like it's going to associate these different words together and have just like a predictive model for what is most likely to be the correct response based on the data associations that it obtains. And it also then has it does have guardrails put in place for better or for worse sometimes, right? Where it's built to like you can't go to ChatGPT and ask it, incredibly inappropriate questions,
right,
and dangerous questions.
Right.
It's not going to answer you because the builders of it will not allow it to. And so I think, maybe if there's just like really evil people that build their own that allow it, but I don't.
Okay. This is a good conversation.
Yeah.
So my question is since it is user built, or there's got to be a builder. This is where I think people were getting in trouble with the latest. One of the AI models was distorting history in some capacity, and they were saying, well, it's going to be reflective to the ideals of the creators. Well,
are you talking about the Google incident? Yeah.
I didn't get fed up by that. I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think there's really anything sinister there. I think
No, my understanding is that the directive that the AI was given was to try and include diverse results, and
it misinterpreted.
Yeah. And so it isn't like it's spinning some narrative or anything like that. Like the AI is only as good as the data that's being fed into it. And so as a society, right, like if we were asked questions on the panel, like, what are we going to do about biases in AI and how are we going to make sure to fix them? And, I had kind of two main thoughts around it. One is that the AI is only as good as the data that's being fed into it. And so if we as a society want to change perceptions around certain biases, then we as a society need to be better. We need to put out better content, better things, better data sources for AI to pull from,
right,
so that it stops making certain assumptions of groups of people.
Okay.
And then my other thought was bias isn't inherently bad.
No.
Every human has bias. Sometimes we benefit from that bias. Like my prime example is like, look, if these algorithms, if AI, whatever it is, wants to assume that I'm a Taylor Swift fan because I'm a 30-year-old white woman and, I'm probably a Taylor Swift fan, fine.
Right.
Like and marketers can use that to their advantage, right? Like there's certain bias that
what's inherent in the human experience? Absolutely, yeah. We can't. We just choose to pick and choose the ones that we feel that don't align with ours.
Yeah, and so if we can't, I think that instead of trying to control AI in regards to say like don't be biased, don't make this assumption about people.
Okay, it's
more about society changing, which is a longer change. And I do think that we are doing that, right? Like, it's taken us a while, and it's probably still going to take us a while. There are inherent, racist bias and things like that that are sad and unfortunate. And the better we get as a society, AI is only taking what we give it.
It's funny, like so if you say that, someone will say, well, you're assuming that the society is more moral. I would say that I think society in general becomes more informed. And when we're informed about injustices, we have proven over time that we slowly eradicate them.
Exactly.
Humans have proven that. So you can label it moral or not. You don't even have to do that. Just look at the results. Right?
Yeah.
And you're saying if that's how AI grows in that model, then there's hope.
Yeah. Absolutely. And now you can go back and forth and argue like, well, maybe it's not happening fast enough in certain times. Fine. But that's a human problem. That's not necessarily AI's fault.
Do we need a council of nations that is expressly set up to deal with is AI? How do I hate to even put it in these terms, but AI management globally, so we don't, and I understand that can be looked upon by people in so many negative ways, but if it really is growing that quick and can be that devastating under the wrong hands, do we need some like global cohesion to keep it together?
I mean, it's going to become just so normal in our everyday society. Yes, I mean, there will absolutely be committees and programs and international guidance on it. I mean, there has to be, and it's just going to become second nature to us as a society. And so, like anything else in that has that level of impact, it's gonna get regulated, and it's gonna have to have some kind of oversight. I mean, everything. Look at even like, how we generate power, like nuclear power plants, right? Like I don't know a lot about that industry. I know my husband used to work in it, but there's just like an interesting network of regulation globally around those plants, right? And this is, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It can be the same. There's going to be this collective,
format. Yes. So talk a little bit about what your prediction will be for our labor market.
Yes.
Because that's the big fear, I think, that most people, they go to immediately when you say AI.
I mean, look, I don't know that AI is going to necessarily take our jobs and leave no jobs. I think it is going to change what our jobs are and how we do them. And any massive change in society has always done that. Right?
The web did that.
Yeah, the web did that. Drastic. I mean, my job didn't exist, 30 years ago, 35 years ago.
This hobby didn't exist 15 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah, so like we will always learn and adapt and find new jobs. I think that when I look at my kids and I think about the amount of knowledge that they're probably going to have that I do not have, that's going to exist around this specifically, how to, like, I think there are going to be so many jobs created that really deal even with just like AI inputs, being a writer to create inputs to execute on things, right? Like that's going to be a whole new job market.
Right.
So will it eliminate some of those more like repetitive type tasks and things that can be automated in like a better way? Yes, it absolutely will.
So the unskilled, it seems like unskilled labor is going to take the biggest hit.
Probably, yes. If we're being realistic, yeah, probably. But I don't think that means, like, I think that it's just going to shift where that demand lays. I think that the most successful people are going to be the ones who aren't necessarily afraid of it and are willing to learn about it, willing to work with it. Certainly. I mean, I look at my own job, right? And my job is to analyze data, figure out cause and effect, and create recommendations and solutions based on the data that I see from a performance perspective. And, our product team would love to build an AI that gets in my brain and can do what I am talking about, right? And they probably will to some degree. They're already kind of starting.
Right.
So, but I'm okay with that because I'm not necessarily afraid. I feel like I'm going to be able to adapt and learn, and I'm going to be able to lean in to this and work with it
and roll with it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you also have an understanding of it as well too. Oh, at least you have a 2024 understanding of it. Sure. And a lot of people don't. They see these Amazon robots or these Tesla robots working in factories, with arms and little like humans, and I mean they see things like that and it immediately freaks them out.
I mean, but there's always going to be different jobs for kind of that unskilled labor market. There's always going to be something and something new. I think so. I mean, I it's just going to look different over time. I think AI is really going to shift a lot, and I think there's still going to be roles. It's just going to look a bit different. And I guess like the biggest thing that I can compare this to, and why I keep referencing like historical context, is like think about when electricity was invented, right? How many jobs that created, but then also took away.
Right.
Or there used to be what, like I don't know, so forgive me, but what was it, like the telephone operators?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Operators, yeah.
I mean, I never...
Yeah, that was the thing when I was a kid. Yeah, that was the thing.
You know? And,
pull the thing out, plug it in over here.
Exactly. So that was a job that just, poof, disappeared.
Yeah, and the web did that. I mean, we survived. The web changed. I remember when the web started, there was predictions. Oh, all retail was going to go away. Malls were going to evaporate. And no strip malls. No one's going to want the in-shopping experience. They were going to be willing to wait a couple of days to get their stuff. Well, you can see that didn't happen.
People, again, like human experience. Even though they like the web and they like the hyper-personalization of the web and they get their confirmation bias and they get all these things that we talked about and they enjoy the innovations and they enjoy that marketplace, we as humans still want to be with humans and have a human experience. Like, I think this...
I know I do.
Yeah. I mean, this dystopian reality that everybody's so afraid of, where people are going to be just sitting in their homes and living in this virtual AI world with masks on their faces and not going out into the air and interacting with people. I'm not afraid of that because I don't think that anybody actually wants that.
So my thoughts are on that exact description you just gave. I do think that is the future. But I believe it's generations down the line, maybe 10 generations down the line. Because I do think that I think the human experience will change and I think mold with technology. And we as a species may eventually start operating or even resembling something different.
Yeah, but I also think, I mean, sure. So even if it's
hundreds of years from now,
even if it's us in the metaverse, right, and we interact with humans in the metaverse, that is still a certain level of human
what's
interaction.
your thoughts on it as the metaverse sits today? Like, I mean,
as it sits
I'm sure
today,
you played with it, right?
I actually haven't. I don't get the appeal. And again, maybe it's because I'm an extrovert in that regard.
Okay.
And
so you never put the goggles on?
No.
Because I haven't either.
I have way more of an inherent need to be around people.
Okay.
And I think that getting outside, and it sounds so stupid, but like being outside and being in the sun and interacting with humanity is what cures so much of our own just sadness and issues. And I think we learned that during the pandemic. I think everybody learned how much we actually do need human interaction, you know? And I think at first it was kind of a running joke, like, oh, thank God I can just sit inside all day and play my video games or watch movies. I don't got to go to work. This is great. I don't have to go to the office. Yeah, exactly. And like it started out that way where we were like, this is great. But I think that over time, I mean, I don't know if this was your experience, but it got kind of sad and it got old and you missed just talking face to face with somebody. And I think that is our, like, that's nature. That's us as like mammals, right? Like that's where that's coming from.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. I have this fear. Well, let me ask you this. Why does podcasting exist? Or I'm sure it's probably multiple reasons, but I'm interested to hear, why is this format? It doesn't have to be as elaborate as this video show, but the idea of this new media, right? And it could be anyone in their base, from a celebrity, from a comedian to an actor to someone in their basement. Why is the public fascinated about podcasting and listening to rare interviews, something different?
I think that, well, I mean, people enjoy discourse and conversation, and I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to more like pop culture podcasts, and I can tell you the reason why I listen to those is honestly sometimes because I don't have other people to talk about these things with. Like my husband's not going to talk to me about reality television.
Right.
He doesn't care about that.
Right.
But when I listen to a podcast where these podcasters are talking about these things, I find myself yelling sometimes where I'm like, yes, exactly. How ridiculous was that? And it's, again, maybe it comes back to that confirmation, you know, that people are seeking, but
interest procurement. You're procuring your interests, data on your interests.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I will scroll through, you know, and look at some podcasts and see, like, I have my repeats that I like to listen to because they often talk about topics that I'm interested in. And then I can be drawn to people of interest and listen to what they have to say on certain podcasts. Like I will every now and then listen to like Armchair Expert, the Dak Shepard podcast. And I enjoy his thoughts, but I enjoy it so much more when there's people on there that I'm genuinely interested in. Right.
Do you think part of the appeal is, because I'm confused. We started this thing and I thought I'd be doing it for a month and a half and I get bored and quit. But there seemed to be people that were interacting, strangers and emails and text messages. And what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just having conversations. And I think the recurring theme was, Kaci, that people were saying it's refreshing watching other people sit in their room and talk with each other. It's kind of sad when I heard that, like you don't do that anymore? Like, I mean, do we not go into Starbucks anymore as frequently and sit and stare each other in the eye and talk?
No, I don't think we do. I think we are seeing people less, right? Like it's, you know, I mean, I know in my own personal life, like I don't see my friends and even my family like as much as I want to. I see my family quite a bit, but my friends, that I think has more to do with the stage of life that I'm in. Sure. Right. Like I have two kids under 2. Like I can't go out. I can't go out to wine, wine nights and tacos and tequila, like I maybe want to. Sure. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe there is a little bit of that craving of conversation, but I also think that we enjoy hearing what people think. Just
I hope so.
In general.
We find commonality maybe with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think, again, in this, it almost sounds contradictory of me to say that, though, right? Because I'm talking about prior, we were just talking about how on Facebook you don't always have to share what you think, and you don't always have to. And so it is kind of like I don't know, I guess it's a little confusing. Because this feels more human. This feels more conversational, interactive, maybe a little more enjoyable to listen to. Format of Facebook, not nearly as enjoyable, right? Because people it seems like they're just on there yelling at each other.
It does.
And so maybe it's just something about like how we consume it that makes the difference, I guess.
And it's interesting that the written communication is so much more volatile than when you watch a video for people. They may disagree, but you don't see them going at each other's throats.
Well, that's also just the reality of text in general, right? I mean, I can't even tell you how many assumptions I've made where I'm like, oh, this person's mad at me because they texted a certain way.
Emojis.
Yeah, it's like they didn't put an exclamation point. What's wrong with them? Like what did I do?
I know.
And it's so funny because that same conversation being had in person might look totally different.
Oh yeah.
Totally different.
100%.
And there are some people that just come off horrible online, but then are wonderful in person. I mean, I work with some people that are like that, right? Like they send me messages on Slack or an email and I'm like, oh, what's this person's problem? But then I talk to them in a meeting and I'm like,
it's a different person.
Wait, they're fantastic. So it's so easy to misconstrue text.
It is. And it's almost like to be effective now, both in your personal life and in business life, you need to really curate and put some extra moments into your written communications to make sure they actually reflect what you're trying to express.
Yeah.
That's almost like a whole nother, set of curriculum for kids coming out of college. They should have that.
People don't know how to express their thoughts.
Not correctly.
No.
And that's, I just really am disheartened to some degree, probably because of my age, just watching, because there's no real reason. I said this multiple times. Outside of my wit and great personality, there's no real reason for anyone to watch this show because I don't bring famous people on. We're very kind of, specific in this little Western Pennsylvania area, but people from all over the globe like buy into the conversations, and it's kind of cool. But I look at it like, wow, are we that starved for interaction and conversation that we're okay watching other people having conversations, but maybe we're not doing it enough ourselves?
I don't know if that's entirely it. I do think we're craved almost for information, and maybe that has to do with this big change, right? So, and the reason why I say that is, so I listened to the podcast episode that you did with my dad, the Hunters episode. Now I started it.
Which one?
There's two. I know.
I know, they were great.
It was the more recent one. But so I listened to it, and the only reason that I started listening to it was because of my dad, right? Like I'm not that interested in kayak fishing.
I really wasn't either, but I hosted the damn thing. But I learned a lot.
Yeah, but that's exactly it.
That's why we did it.
I listened to it, and I'm like, wow, kayak fishing. I'm like, but it has a motor on it, and I found myself listening to these guys.
And the humor.
Yeah, I mean, the humor absolutely was appealing for sure. They were very funny, but it was so crazy because I found that learning to be enjoyable.
Got it.
Yeah. It's like So it's like, are we in a world of information overload? Yes, absolutely. And can it be really overwhelming at times? And does it have negative effects on humans? Sure. But I also think that it's made us so curious and able to scratch that itch in our brain to discover new things. And I think that maybe that's some of the draw to podcasting is hearing other people's experiences.
So it's the same vein as, I cannot, so to make sure I phrase this right. I cannot express to you the momentous moment in my life that this curious brain had when all of my prior life I had to go seek out things I was interested in and investigate. And it was not always easy. And sometimes you just gave up because there wasn't the resources. Now I had this box on the screen that I could type in anything I want about any guitar, car, how to date a particular female, whatever is on my brain at that moment, to put it in there. And the world of information that was such a momentous, I cognitively was aware of how amazing that was. I sat and contemplated, like, this is unfreaking believable. I mean,
the internet taught me how to play my guitar. It taught me how to play my keyboard.
There you go.
I was interested, and so I learned.
Yeah, it's such and so what I'm saying is maybe this podcast is another extension of that. There are conversations about topics that I am uniquely interested that I probably wouldn't go out and tell people that I'm interested in, but I found something, I want to hear about that Roswell crash in 1947. I'm not going to go talk in public, they'll laugh at me, but I'll go here and look at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, but I also think that's why, but I think that TikTok kind of does that.
Okay.
I can't even tell you how much I have learned. A weird amount of things that I have learned.
Oh, do tell.
I never thought, like, the posts about, what's the one that I'm on right now? Apparently my algorithm thinks that I'm very interested in, like, weird or, like, somewhat disturbing, like, history facts.
Okay.
Where I think, like, the one that I saw, and I don't even know if these are facts, right? Like, this, like, wound up on my TikTok page. Okay. So I did not fact check this. But, like, it said something like, Alexander the Great or somebody like that was accidentally buried alive. And I'm, like, scrolling through. I'm like, really? And then I scroll through.
Here we go.
Yeah, and I'm
down the rabbit hole.
And I'm like, what? And then it starts talking about, like, Marie Antoinette, and it's talking about, like, King Henry. And I'm like, I don't even remember from history class who half these people are.
Right.
But suddenly I'm very invested in, like, was he really buried alive?
Right.
And yeah, it's interesting. And for some reason, TikTok served it up to me and was like, here, you'll enjoy this. But it's so many things. Like, it's I can't even explain how much has popped up on my page that I'm just like homesteading is really big on TikTok. And it's really big culturally right now. In fact, like, my husband and I have talked about buying and growing our own food, like buying a garden, growing our own food, starting, hydroponics inside. Yep. And that's because I have some digestive health issues, and it's hard for me to eat out a lot of the time. And so my husband has just lately become obsessed with it, but TikTok's all over it, man. I mean, I watch videos about how to raise chickens, and I have no intention of ever.
Oh, if you do that, you're definitely coming back on the show and tell us how that goes.
Right? I mean, look, like, I have no intention, but I will find myself sitting there watching a video about how to diagnose when your chicken is sick and what to do about it. And I'm like, why am I doing this?
I think mankind's been doing that in general.
Yeah.
But they try to explain to somebody, even you, because you did not experience this. I guarantee, I know you didn't. When you were of age that you could use a computer, the internet was already on its way.
Yeah.
We had to go to the library. But beyond that, I was lucky because my parents invested in Encyclopedia Britannia.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you bought it and it was outdated after like 2 or 3 years later, but you would get the yearbook. Every year they give you a yearbook of like the latest current events. And I would leaf through that thing, usually out of boredom. But it was the extent of where you could get knowledge. If especially with a person of limited financial means, this is where you would have to go. And that equated to a different type of society.
Oh, absolutely.
Who depended on those nightly news shows and depended on those little moments to gather information.
Well, and what I can tell you is I was probably the last generation to be forced to do both. So when I was going through school, there were assignments that we were allowed to complete there were assignments that we were allowed to complete by using the internet and using the computer, and they taught us how to cite sources on the internet, what reliable sources are. And then there would be assignments where they would say, no using a computer. You have to look this up. You have to use the school library.
Okay.
You have to check sources. Today they don't. I mean, because even at the time, I'm sitting there and I'm in like 9th grade, right? Or 8th grade, whatever. And I'm like, why the hell do I have to look this up in books when the world is going in this direction?
Got it.
And that was probably a fair question to ask, right?
Yes.
Because, I mean, even looking at my sister, 7 years younger than me, I don't think that she had to do that.
Got it.
To the same extent that me and my generation had to.
I remember when they let us use a Texas Instrument calculator on one of my my physics exams. I couldn't believe they let us use it.
I'd have never been able to survive if I didn't have that. Are you kidding? I mean, I went to...
That was a game changer.
Yeah. I mean, I got my MBA from Pitt.
Uh-huh.
And
Cats?
Yep. Great program. Fantastic program. And wonderful professors. I'm still very involved with Cats. I speak in a branding class once a quarter, just like as a guest lecturer.
Very
and then
cool.
Hoping to get more involved in events like the AI conference that I just did. But yeah, Cats was challenging for me. Right? Like I studied fashion, okay? And I was working in SEO at the time. And so I knew my motivation for doing that was because I knew that if I wanted to get to where I want to get to, I want to be in charge. I want to be the chief marketing officer for a brand or, the person at kind of the top really helping make these decisions for an organization.
The more global decisions of the organization.
Absolutely. And if I have those lofty goals for myself, I knew that I needed a better business acumen. I needed a better background. I needed to understand finance better, which I still don't really understand finance. But so that's kind of my point. Is like when I was learning all these things, thank God for that calculator, especially in my finance classes. I even had a professor come up to me. He was like, you have no aspirations of being a CFO, right? I was like, no. He's like, okay, I'll pass you.
That's great.
Not me, not my strong suit. So thank God for technology. Thank God I had that calculator. Thank God I had my computer. Thank God, because I think if I was trying to earn my MBA 30 years ago and I didn't have those things available to me, not a chance in hell.
Are libraries going away?
I think the concept of a library is going to change. I think it's more so going, and I already kind of see this shift happening. I think it's more of like a community center type of thing.
Okay.
Like even the Moon Library has events and things like that. I got an email for like toddlers, like a toddler gathering where they can come together and there's a story time and stuff like that.
Okay.
People do still enjoy reading.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I was never a big reader. It's actually a hobby that I'm starting to pick up more now as an adult because it's actually like calming. It's kind of nice.
It is. It can be therapeutic. Audible app just destroyed my reading. I mean, I'm still reading, but I'm not at the vivacious pace that I used to have. I like physical books, I think, more than I like audio books. Do you still write, or do you find yourself not using a pen anymore? I think that I get my thoughts out better when I write them down on paper. And so when I am at work, like if I have like a to-do list, I find myself writing it instead. And I'm like
half embarrassed to say this, but one of my like forms of expression, like I like poetry. So sometimes I'll write, like I'll just sit in my bed and I'll write poetry in that regard. And
not on the computer though.
Not on a computer. I write it out. Oh, I've never written it on a computer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I read of these authors who write books by dictation or they write on a computer, and I marvel at that because I get it from the creativity standpoint. If you can type fast and things are just coming to you, it's a good way to get it all out. But when you write by hand, I like it because I think it intentionally slows you down mentally.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably pretty healthy.
I think that's why it works for me for my to-do lists.
Okay.
Because if I'm at work, and I wear a lot of different hats in my role. I manage an SEO team, an analytics team, a social media team, and then an adoption and retention function.
Okay.
So, and it all just is encompassed in this concept of the local marketing and analytics team. And so I got a lot going on at any given time. Now, thankfully, I have a very intelligent team, and they're fantastic. So I don't have to micromanage anybody.
Got it.
But you know, the problems that the analytics team has are a lot different than the problems that my adoption team has, that my retention team, that my SEO team. They're all very different. And so when I find that I take notes and like write things out, I think it really allows me to like process what it is that I need to do and make sure that I'm like remembering to do it rather than like a quick note on my computer that I then forget to check, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's one of my 8 million tabs open.
Yeah, I have to intentionally slow myself down.
Oh yeah,
like mentally, and writing things out is part of that process for me. Also, just getting out every night and going to a track and getting miles in and just doing it, getting myself connected to technology.
Yes.
But I have to force myself to do that.
Same.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable. Not having your phone or
it
not
creates
not
anxiety,
being
I think, for a lot of humanity.
Well, and because I think like right now we're in this era of just like being immediately available to everybody.
It's terrible.
It's horrible.
Terrible.
And we get anxious when we're not. Mm-hmm. But no, I think, I mean, I have to be very intentional about that too. I try to meditate every now and then when I can after I get the kids to bed and you know, my brain's finally able to decompress. I have a really hard time with that. My brain feels like it never stops. And I
especially
think
with the kids on top of everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. I think that that's a benefit in my life while also being a hindrance at times. Like I think it benefits me because I do think really fast and I have a lot of things going at once and I'm able to I'm able to wear all those hats because I have a million thoughts racing through my head at any given time. But it also can cause anxiety. It can cause, sleepless nights.
It has to be managed. Yeah, for sure.
Like you have to figure out how to turn it off every now and then, which is hard.
Yeah, I seek out moments when I can to have completely technology-free time. Now, you would think going to the track and getting miles in would do that, but I'm usually connected with some audiobook or something. So I intentionally will take my guitar outside, not even with a tuner. I don't want any kind of technology. I take my watch off. I don't want anything on me.
Yep.
And I'll go spend an hour where I don't even know what time it is. I just play till I'm done. But that's the closest I can come to having a purely organic moment. And I'm thankful for having the ability to do that, because if I didn't have that, I don't know how I would create a technology-free moment for myself.
It's funny you say it. I do the exact same, especially, in the summertime. A lot of times I will, like if I need the cords or the tabs or anything, I'll print it off. I'll leave everything inside.
Paper, right.
Yep. And then I will go sit out on my deck, and my neighbors can probably hear me. and that's embarrassing because, I'm very amateur, right? Like I only picked
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like I only picked up instruments because I was a vocalist.
Got it.
Like I grew up singing.
Sure.
My entire life and going through vocal lessons.
So you're musical. And
yes.
that can lead you to certainly.
Yeah. But it's really nice to just sit out there until the sun goes down.
Yes.
And
just not to be. I mean, you think about it, everything is talking to you now. You know, you get up and your phone, and you got some kind of clock there, and you know, you probably listen to the radio, or you got some kind of messages, texting coming in from somebody. We were communicative. Yeah, exactly. And you know, there's refrigerators now with pads on them. You know, your washer and dryer
Everything's
talking.
Smart.
Yeah, your washer and dryer is talking to you about what the laundry's done, halfway done, not done. You know, when you forgot the fabric softener, whatever. It's like everything is talking to you. You're trying to, I say, get the claws into your day. And you have to be intentional about decoupling. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, all of these things are competing for your attention. All of these channels are competing for your attention.
True. True.
And I think it's both an enjoyable thing and something that we have to watch and temper with ourselves.
I worry, though. I worry that with each generation, they are going to be so used to it from the moment they open their eyes.
I think that there's a shared fear of that, though. So like my generation, we're the ones becoming parents now, and maybe some older Gen Z. And there's this movement, this obsession with reduce screen time, reduce, processed foods, pay attention.
Is it real, or is it just kind of
it's really real. Thing? I mean, most parents, and maybe this is just my experience in my bubble, right? Because everybody has their own bubbles. But we are obsessed right now with it. Like my kids, they will watch certain things, but we're really careful about it. Like we're really careful about putting on shows that have high frame rates, because it's been proven that if the frame rate is too high and the image switches too frequently, it has been linked to things like ADHD and, resulting in kids not being able to divert their attention.
How do you, so I understand, like there's, so this is what I know about photography and videography. 24p was like film, like 30 is kind of standard, and 60 frames per second that's when you say frame rate, that's where my mind goes. What are you referring to frame rate?
So maybe it's not technically frame rate. I guess what I'm referring to is
just quick changes?
Quick changes, yes. Okay. So how fast does the image on the screen change? Because it's apparently a thing where these overstimulating shows is what they're being classified as. So I think
Can you name some of them?
Yeah, so like Cocomelon is one of those shows.
You listening?
Cocomelon. And apparently those shows, and you don't know where I learned this, was on TikTok. But I actually did look it up. I'm very kind of invested in this topic because apparently those shows has been linked to kids who have really short attention spans. It hurts these kids more than it helps them in any way, shape, or form. And maybe it helps mom get the dishes done. But at the same time, wouldn't you rather make sure that your kids are consuming things that are going to just help them be better people? And so we're really careful about what we allow to be on the television.
Go back and put Bear in the Big Blue House on.
Well, no, honestly though, a lot of people are going back to old television shows like
Dora the Explorer,
like Arthur and
Barney.
Yeah, because those shows aren't these just like colorful in your face animated.
Yeah, it's all animated.
Yeah. So like. My kids right now, they enjoy, well, really only one kid. The other one's 4 months old, so he enjoys me, and that's about it. But he really likes like Bluey, which Bluey is just
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a very it's such a great cartoon.
This is a slower pace.
It's a slower pace, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And so things like that are better for kids to consume. Realistically, screen time in general is not great for kids.
Right.
But sometimes
it's the ultimate babysitter, right?
Sometimes you need the screen. So, it's being careful about what it is that they're going on. So yeah, we're careful about that. And then we're also recently very obsessed with what foods we're consuming. Right. And,
how can we not be now if you're paying attention?
Yeah. I mean, I have some digestive issues and it's terrible sometimes. I feel so sick after I eat at times. And part of me sits there and wonders, and this is, look, I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. But part of me wonders, is it because I grew up eating Taco Bell and
Sure.
Stouffer's meals
Sure.
and, Kraft mac and cheese boxes and
Processed food.
Processed food, and even like processed candies and dyes, like red dye. And like, there's just been so many.
We're all guilty.
Yeah, there's been so many studies about the long-term effects of these things now, and what it can do to our development and our digestive systems. And so I think about that, and I'm like, man, I don't want my kids to wind up dealing with that. So my husband actually, maybe he took it a little bit too far, but he decided that we're going to mill our own flour.
Oh, right on.
So we bought an attachment for our KitchenAid, and we're doing that now, apparently.
Right
and it's been a learning curve because home milled flour has a different texture and consistency than something you're going to buy from the store.
I get that. I mean, during the pandemic, I made a bunch of changes, and one was my diet. And I wasn't celiac or anything, but I read a lot about eliminating flour when at all possible. So I started eating Ezekiel bread, which is a bread made from, I guess, not grains. I guess they're made from sprouted grains or something.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
it's probably
exactly.
something like that.
I know what I'm talking about. It's a flourless bread is what it is.
Yeah.
And I saw... And I incorporated that heavy into my diet, and I saw massive health changes.
Yeah.
That's simple change.
Yes, absolutely. And we, we're doing it because there's so much out there now. And again, I mean, I just keep going back. Like, I'm learning a lot of these things on TikTok. There was a video posted, and it was real. Like, this really happened. There was an article written about it. There was whatever. They showed this, like, the inside of, I think it was like a Kraft, what's the word I'm looking for?
Mac and cheese or something?
Yeah, but it was one of their, facilities.
Yeah, okay.
And it was showing, like, mold on the inside, and somebody who worked there was like, look, like, I'm just posting this. I don't work for Kraft anymore, so I don't care. And here's proof that they only wash these machines like once every couple weeks, something like that.
We forget about the fact that there's tolerances, permissible tolerances.
Yes.
So if you make a vat of something, there's probably a tolerance level is governmentally okay.
Yes. Well, and if you look at there is an uprising right now on the internet of people who do not like the Food and Drug Administration. I mean, and first off, whose idea was it to put food and drug in the same regulatory space, right? I mean, why do we need half the drugs that we have?
Yeah.
Think about what we're consuming. And maybe maybe my tinfoil hat is on a little bit here, right? Like, I don't want to be too far of a conspiracy theorist.
How can we not be concerned?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at what's banned in other countries.
What's permitted here.
And what's permitted here.
All over the board.
It's alarming. It's alarming. There are things that China does not want its people to consume. And obviously the impression here is that, whatever it may be in America of China or of Russia or of some of these countries that are our adversaries, but like, they regulate their food more than our own government does.
We take that concept of American exceptionalism to the point where we end up believing into that so deeply that if it's permitted here, it must be okay.
And it's not. It's scary.
It is. I hope we're waking up.
And again, where did I learn all of this? That is why I'm more concerned about this potential ban. Like, yes, I obviously have concerns over data privacy, 100%. I think that it can be very dangerous for people who are, for countries who are anti-American or who we have, issues with.
Yes, I agree.
To have our data.
No, I totally get it.
But I do think that there's a huge risk to a platform like this going away, because this is the content that I'm talking about, that I think collectively people are learning and they're waking up and they're sharing these learnings and these understandings about, Big Pharma and the Food and Drug Administration, and people from other countries are on TikTok telling Americans their experience. And we're seeing how different their experience is. And we're questioning, why don't we get that?
Yeah, but I would say the question would be is, if there's all this American exceptionalism, then why is our government okay with taking as many risks with our food than other countries are.
Profits. Right?
And there's still plenty of profit to be made if you can still take care of your people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to a certain degree, right, some of these learnings that we've had are still relatively recent, right? Like the effects of plastic, the effects of dyes, like, I get it. It's not like when those things were created, they were created with malice intent.
Right.
But there have been learnings since then, and other countries seem to integrate those learnings into the betterment of their society, where for some reason we're still behind, and I don't get it.
We should be leading the world in that regard.
We should be leading the world in that regard, 100%.
But we're not.
Right.
Did you have a good time?
I did.
You were outstanding.
Thank you.
But
this was fun.
I kind of predicted that. I would love to have you back on in different formats, so we'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
But this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a while. And again, I know it's a commitment to come on and dedicate a little bit of time. You got 2 little ones at home, under 2.
Under 2.
But thank you. It meant a lot that you came tonight and did this.
Of course. No, this was really fun. I love these type of discussions.
We're going to do it.
Sounds great.
All right, my friend.
Awesome.
All right, friends. We are out.